Hello everyone, thank you for joining me. This video represents part 2 in the DIY Fish series, where I'm going to review how I use the different versions or sets of DIY fish inserts, how I adapt to each for business and personal use. I'll put a link to part 1 in the description below, but one of the most interesting and useful parts of the DIYFish life mapping inserts is that the life mapping components can be mixed and used in different ways to suit different needs. So for part 2, I thought I'd show a variety of ways I've used versions 3 and versions 5 in the A6 size for the month of October. So let's jump right in. I'm still in the A6 Giglio Campagna in Ipaca Black. I'm not going to go through each of the sections of the planner since I already did that in part 1, but let's go to the current month. So we are in October. I decided to stick with one version for the entire month so that I didn't have to switch the monthly page out. Rather, what I did switch out were the weekly inserts. I also encompassed some daily pages on the last week, and I will show you how I use those. So for the month of October, I went with the V3C monthly fold out. This is a monthly page that is completely covering the entire page, as opposed to the September one. If you recall, it only goes out to about halfway, and the rest had some information that I could use in a variety of different ways. But for this one, it's on the opposite side of the page and it takes up the full size, which is great if you have large handwriting or have a lot of information that needs to go in these boxes. However, on the back side of this page, you'll see that we have a similar chart to the kind of like the monthly chart over here, but in a vertical format. So this is a horizontal version, where this is more of a vertical version. So what I've done here is I tracked my water intake for health reasons. And then the household maintenance, I just set a number of how many household maintenance items I got done for the week, or for the day. So in this particular case, I did very little on my household maintenance items because I was visiting or traveling a lot for this month. And then at the top, I also added my weekly chores so that I could keep track of what I was getting accomplished for the week. But I did, again, not do a lot of these because I was on vacation and wasn't home. So I did utilize the middle section for the bills, similar to the way I did in September. So here's the bills. And to remind you, I highlight the ones on the left that are auto pay set up, and then I highlight as they clear my bank account on the right hand side. On the facing page, I wrote in my projects for the month and things that I needed to take care of for the month. They weren't set to a specific day. So that is V3C in the monthly fold out. On the monthly actual daily pages or daily blocks in the monthly, I only put big events on here, as well as I highlighted each day as each day passed, so that I could draw my eye to the date that I'm actually on quickly. Now for the first week, I chose V3S3. This includes the back facing page, so I went ahead and used this to put pending items from the month before, and also my household maintenance book that I mentioned in part 1. I just took out the sticky note for the month of what that what the household maintenance requirements were for the month. I just took the sticky note out and put it in here. I'll erase these marks and put them back in for next October's use. And then next month I will go ahead and put this sticky note in with the November DIY fish inserts. For the first week, I chose the V3 S3 weekly week on 2 pages. This includes some to-do boxes or check boxes at the top where you could probably put your top 3, or in this case top 5 items, because there's 5 boxes, along with a 2 a.m. to 12 p.m. time frame. Not all of them are in hourly blocks, but it does start the hourly breakdown at the 6 a.m. hour, and it continues hourly till the 12 p.m. So only the beginning 2 hours or 5 hours are not written down, because most of us are sleeping during those hours anyway. The bottom squares are what I use to put my weekly to-dos. They weren't set on a specific day. If they were set to a specific day, I put it at the top of the page. I put my meals over on the left-hand side, and then it has a small weekly tracker. So I tracked things that were the most important to remind me so I didn't forget, such as pulling something out of the freezer to defrost for dinner, making sure my dogs got their pet meds. I always balance my checkbook every day, and then making sure that I did 1 or 2 of the chores and or household maintenance items that are on the monthly page. This worked out really great. And I also put the weather at the top, but it does have the day. I didn't have to put meals. I could have probably put these in here, but I felt that I had more room at the bottom. So you have a variety of ways that you could manipulate where you put this information. For example, I could have put meals maybe in this block and then put another one for chores down here, but since I already had chores up here, I didn't find a need for it. It worked out perfect for me, and I liked it a lot. The second week, I decided to use the V3 S2 version. I think this was the set that I originally started with back in, I think 2013 is when I started using DIY Fish, or it may have been late 2012. I can't recall off the top of my head, but I did a similar fashion where I broke the side of the page into 2 parts. One where I could put the weather, the meal, and my Bible study in, and any major to-dos. And then on the left-hand side, I would put my schedule. One thing I like, and I'll show this in greater detail on the next page, but it has these little dotted lines that kind of separate the date from the rest of the page. And you could easily use that separator to put the time of the appointment underneath here and put the actual event name on the right hand side of that dotted line. I didn't think about it when I was using this page on the first week of use, but I did think about it on the next page, and I thought it would be a great use of separating your time from your actual event to just kind of visually help you keep track of those. This too worked out great because I had all my to-dos on the right hand side for the week, as well as a little bit larger habit tracker on the right hand side where I could put a few more items. I don't necessarily need every single one of these because I do it habitually now that I've been doing it for so long, but it felt a little empty, so I just added a few items. Saturday and Sunday didn't have any actual to-dos done because I wasn't in town. I left for Orlando, and there was obviously I couldn't make my bed or do any of those items while away. This worked out great as well. Had plenty of space left over. Yeah, so great use of version 3 S2. And then the following week, I know it's very limited in its use. This is version 3 S1. And the only reason why is because I was out of town, I was on a cruise, but as I mentioned on the last week's set, it has a dotted line that separates the date from the rest of the page. It doesn't go fully down, which is also great because typically I don't have more than 3, maybe 4 appointments in one day. So this goes down 3 lines on each. So it's perfect for putting in the date, or excuse me, putting in the timed event as well as the event name to the right. I could further break this down and put a line and make my same kind of breakdown where I had the weather, the Bible study chapter, and the meal on the right hand side. But again, I wasn't home, so I didn't bother. The habit tracker is similar to the habit tracker over here and in the amount of space it has. But, you know, now that I recall, it wasn't this set that was my first style that I used. It was this set that was my first style. And I did break it into 2 parts, putting those items, as I mentioned, similar to the way I did here. So I know for a fact that this set can be very useful. I did back in some information after the fact, but I did put some pre-information about where I was going, and this was very helpful in planning my outfits for each of the days I was at sea. So the next week was last week, and this is version 3C S6. This is similar in fashion to the first one, but it doesn't go as far down on the page. It's kind of broken up into different sections. It also includes a little bit larger habit tracker and a little bit more space for putting to-dos. So it just depends. This is also doesn't put any hourly breakdown like it does over here, you know. So it just depends. This also has like a note section for similar to the one over here, where you could put, you know, your top goals for the week, some notes, or things not to forget. And that's what I did. So I was coming back from vacation, so I put my top thing that I needed to focus on for the week. This is where I used the time and event names on the, using the dotted line. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on that word. So I put in the timed events throughout, and then I also put in some date-specific to-dos that I needed to manage. On the bottom half of the page, I used the left-hand side to kind of use it as a bullet journal type to-dos for the week, as well as some chores that were household maintenance related, but were specific. So I didn't have to fold back to pick one. I just wrote them in over on the right-hand side. And as you can see, we were so busy, I didn't get anything done this last week for those chores. So they have been migrated to this week. Again, the habit tracker, I did get most of the things done, but except chores. The rest of the pages worked, you know, pretty well. I didn't have a lot of things to focus on because I was coming back from vacation, so I didn't have to fill up the whole thing, which was great. I did not put the weather for this week, which I just noticed, or meals. I think because we were eating out pretty much every day this week. But I could have easily put it at the bottom of the page and put the weather at the top. The next set, oh, and by the way, I used the DIY Fish note pages to take notes for meetings that I had throughout this week. Now the next week, I used version 5 S3. So here I've got version 3C on the monthly page over here, and I've got the version 5 S3, which is really just a weekly fold out, but I incorporated it with the DS5 day on one page, so I can have my monthly, my daily, and a weekly view all in view at the same time. So this is what I did. I let's start with the V5 S3 fold out. On the left-hand side of the page, I wrote down my chores that I didn't get finished last week. I added a few items. This is this week's items that I need to either, they were pending from the week before, or they are carried forward items or continued items that I need to manage. If I find that I have a lull in my schedule, this is where I look to see what else I can tackle. I also put my weekly schedule along with, if it was work related, I highlighted it blue. Pink was personal, or yeah, it's personal. I didn't yet highlight the lab work or the proposal because I just added it today and I forgot. Then on the back side is a habit tracker, like I did in version 2.2, where it's full page size. So I've got my weekly chores there. These are different than these chores. These are in addition to this, but they aren't weekly items. These are monthly or quarterly, or they just are set up in a different schedule. Then my routine is also on there. On the back side, I have a huge page. So because this page folds in half, I kind of just use the crease as a delimiter or a delineator. I have accomplishments on the right hand side for the week and a brain dump to add things for the following week. That would be going into the November insert. Now let's go back to how I'm using that with the DS5 day on one page. So these are similar in the September pages in the fact that they have a hourly layout as well. The only difference is that they don't break, the DS5 doesn't break down these sections like they do in the version 2.2. So it just depends on if you're going to utilize these hexagons, and or if you want a delineator between those two sections. They also don't have the I feel and the weather sections. You get to decide what you want to do with this page. It's completely up to you, but it goes from 1 a.m. to 12 p.m. where the daily pages for September have, hold on, let me look at one, has 1 a.m. to 12 p.m. as well, but with a little bit of extra space at the top. This does too, and that's why I went ahead and used that space for the weather. I used the natural middle of the line where the white space doesn't have grid, and use that as a line to separate the page of my to-dos for the day as well as my schedule. The same thing applies for the 30th, and I also put a meal here. I didn't put a meal here because I was working at the Legion as a volunteer and I didn't have to make dinner. And then this will be tomorrow's. I didn't have anything scheduled for today, but a new item popped up today, so I need to add that to my schedule, and that will go right in here. That is the end of the month for October. It ends it on October 31st, and we'll be moving into the November inserts. I do not know yet which November inserts I'll be using. I'll leave that as a surprise. But if you do have any questions for me as far as part 1, which was version 2.2, and any of the sets that I examined during this video, which I will repeat to you now, we had version 3C for the monthly, V3 S3 in week 1, V3 S2 in week 2, V3 S1 in week 3, V3 CS6 in week 4, and in the final week I used V5 S3 with DS5 day on one page. So I hope that you found this useful and how you can incorporate and mix and match the various components of the DIY Fish life mapping inserts in any way that suits your situation or your life needs, because as I've demonstrated over the last month, you can use these inserts, in so many different ways. So hopefully this has been helpful to you, and until next month, take care. Have a great day, guys.